All right, we are back, and this is the Late Show with your host, Young Brando. We are in Los Angeles. It's about to go dark, and we are ready to roll, or almost ready. We're going to talk about watches. We are going to look at a couple of auctions. The July online sale by Monaco Legend Group is still going on. There are also some news from Monaco Legend Group, a lot of interesting watch sightings at Wimbledon specifically that I documented on Instagram and haven't had a time to share with you guys in a more detailed look, perhaps. So I'm going to start with that. I think it always helps to get things started, helps me warm up a little bit. And also just helps people trickle in and take a look and see if they actually enjoy the show. So let's start with that. We are, let's see, this is a good angle, I think. Hey, Awesome Pawan, it's been a while. It's been a while. My apologies. You guys know that I always try to put on the best show for you, which sometimes helps me makes me what happened again. There's something going on with either my connection or my microphone. We'll figure it out if it I hope it's not the connection and it's just the microphone that was malfunctioning. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see. All right, so let's take a look on my Instagram. And if you don't follow me, please feel free to do that. You know, it's always great to boost the numbers a little bit. Ryan Joffrey, lovely to see you. Bezos, I love you, my friend. I would love to follow up on our conversation behind the scenes, but we'll have to find a proper way to do that. But at any rate, guys, also those of you who are on the East Coast, or those of you who would be traveling to New York City for watch time in October, I will be there. And I look forward to seeing a lot of you there. I know our friend Evan is going to make a day trip out of it. I know St. Peter is going to be there since he lives there to begin with. But I look forward to seeing him as well. And I know a lot of people who may or may not live in New York City, but who are close enough or in the tri-state area, who are on the eastern seaboard, so to speak, would turn up, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'll be there all 3 days, possibly bookending it also with an extra day or two in the beginning and in the end. So I look forward to seeing old friends and meeting those of you that I didn't yet have a chance to. The sound seems to be better now, so hopefully will be good. The Awesome Pawan says, I trust Lord with watch knowledge. He has a PhD in watchmaking. That would be false advertisement. Awesome Pawan, I know a lot of theoretical things about watches, about watchmaking. I have done some practical things, with basic watchmaking classes by now, but I'm not skilled or trained in the actual skill of watchmaking. That's why we have this wonderfully abstract word called horology. And for that, I have some skills, and I always back it up with actual knowledge. So I do appreciate your kind words. No matter what, whether I can back it up or not, it's very kind of you to say. Ryan Joffrey says, I am a legitimate men's clothing expert. I would love to own a men's clothier. Yeah, look, the old haberdashers, so to speak, have gone away for the most part. But since the hashtag menswear boom online that we have experienced largely in the wake of the 2008 economic crisis, although people have different ways of approaching that, different ways of explaining that, there has been a kind of renaissance of men's clothing, especially in brands that specialize, that focus on either bespoke or made to measure and customized stuff, and brands that have a way of mixing, I think, classical items either with very expensive, high-grade luxury materials, like the Loro Pianas and Brunello Cucinellis of this world, or brands that have a way of kind of adjusting their collections to styles influenced by streetwear, workwear, and for that, of course, the examples that come to mind in terms of both independent brands and kind of clothiers like you were mentioning is the Drakes as a brand, Drakes of London, which started with ties and silks and grew into this lifestyle brand / empire under Mark Cho's ownership and Michael Hill's creative directorship, creative stewardship, whatever you want to call it. The Armory, of course, also owned by Mark Cho, with a couple of outposts, both in Hong Kong and New York City, is great. And, there are many others. There are many others, but those are just some of my favorites that have, in fact, bloomed, while some of the more traditional brands are languishing or have completely disappeared. I think the pay / commissions are still pretty paltry. So you genuinely have to love clothes, love that atmosphere, which at its best resembles like a gentleman's club in the real sense, of course, not in the sense that it's often used in the US, where people sell sexual favors, so to speak. Basil says, I can imagine it depends on the company, and in more ways than one, right? Both company as in the brand, the culture of the workplace, but also just in terms of, the people who frequent that store, even your colleagues. I think it's most certainly that. The add-ons are so important. Yeah, some of those luxury brands actually give decent benefits. All right, let's start. Let's start early on. The BET Awards have happened a while ago now, but Noriega, rapper turned podcaster, Drink Champs co-host, was hosting the blue carpet, the red carpet show, so to speak. And he was wearing this new Nautilus flyback chronograph, the 5980 line 60G. The Nautilus in jorts, as I like to say it. I really detest that strap, but it is otherwise, of course, quite a cracking watch, especially if you are into the Nautilus design and you're looking for something a little bit more complicated, a little more tricked out, with an additional function more than the time and the date. I've always liked how Patek seemed to implement in this modern age for their self-winding chronographs that crosshair single register design, as you can sample here. I think that's very attractive and tidy. So I really do like this watch, as much as I'm not necessarily a fan of the Nautilus, and I absolutely detest the strap. It does genuinely remind me of jorts. I think it was Mookie who came up with this name, unless I'm mixing it up. But it's a nice description of the style, honestly. Great watch, nevertheless. Of course, David Beckham was present, as he usually is, at the Wimbledon. I think a lot of it is facilitated also because he's, of course, he famously endorses Tudor, but he also happens to endorse Ralph Lauren, and Ralph Lauren has like a suite where they host celebrities at Wimbledon, since they have been the clothing sponsor of the event for almost 2 decades now. I think 19 years in succession. So Beckham is always there, cuts a nice figure, and he was wearing the Aussie Expat Special, the new Pelagos FXD with the black dial and red writing. I think it's pretty cool. And obviously, I mean, it's, you might have all sorts of arguments about whether you should wear a watch with what is essentially a Velcro strap with a nice suit for an event like Wimbledon. People might have all sorts of different opinions about that. I honestly don't. I don't sweat these things. I think watches essentially should be an expression of your own style. I would also not, I also don't wear tattoos. I don't have any tattoos on my body. So it doesn't really concern me how other people put themselves together, as long as they can communicate something with it, as long as they actually have an intention behind it. And Beckham, for better or worse, always had plenty of intention, plenty of thought behind his public presentation. So pretty cool outfit there, and a great watch, of course, to wear on a daily basis. A different kind of style icon in Larry David. If you have watched even a few episodes of Curb Your Enthusiasm, you would be familiar with his particular style. It always cracks me up, whenever he puts on a sports jacket and he starts strutting his stuff and gets into this kind of swagger. I always find it really funny, endearing, and cringeworthy at the same time. And those are some of the best qualities of the show put together, of course. And it's no wonder that it gets expressed in the clothing, in the clothes that he wears in his wardrobe as well. very early on in the show, there's an episode called Porno Gil, where he gets invited to this dinner party at his friend's house, who is a retired porn star. And he wears this watch, which also plays a role in moving on the plot later on, what they call a MacGuffin in film language. I always wondered what kind of watch that was. I hunted for a few pictures online and saw some forums as well where people were exchanging other pictures. I've always hoped that it would be some sort of Patek Gondolo, just to have something a little more quirky and interesting, but I was surprised by what I found out, and it's perhaps even more interesting because it's this old school Baume & Mercier, most probably quartz powered, just like this guy right here, stainless steel with salmon tinted dial. I think the stock name is Champagne, and it is a classic Art Deco design with a slightly curved case. I think it sits really nicely on the wrist. And funny enough, a similar watch can easily be picked up for less than $1,000. So it's it could be something interesting to play around as a Larry David special, so to speak. Yeah, when it comes to classic haberdashers, I think you can now find them basically in Europe, where you have still these kinds of menswear stores where you have pretty much everything, but not necessarily with excessive branding. And I don't only talk about logos and embroidery, but there's no effort to present everything as in-house, so to speak, to translate it into the language of watches. Not everything is branded as if it were made by that store. Charvet in Paris, right by Place Vendôme, is probably one of the best examples of that. Everything is so neatly divided into their particular floors. And you can find, thousands of different kinds of silks, and seemingly infinite selection of shirting to get yourself something oddly specific. If you want to have a shirt made, if you want to bespeak a shirt, cashmere knitwear made in Scotland, some of it dead stock stuff, from the now defunct manufacturers like Ballantine. It's an interesting world. I mean, Battistoni in Roma has that kind of atmosphere as well, even though they do aspire to present themselves as a lifestyle brand now. But the environment, the store, has a very different aura. Ryan Joffrey says, Ralph Lauren said Purple Label was a vanity project as the clothes are so expensive to produce. They're also so expensively priced as well. I remember the days when they were initially made in England, actually. And they were supposed to reflect or embody this sort of Savile Row style, but in ready-to-wear kind of approach. nowadays, and for a long time now, they have been made in Italy by some of the best manufacturers there, of course. And yeah, they're just unconscionably priced. I mean, it's really an issue of marketing placement, anyways, right? Even if it costs them less, I think they're consciously putting Purple Label at that same level of the Cucinellis and Loro Pianas of this world. And, honestly, why not? I mean, in terms of the legacy of the brand, legacy of the brand name, I think I would be hard pressed to say that Ralph Lauren doesn't deserve it. Of course, the approach is a little bit different, but we would be nitpicking. Coming back to this, the European Championships have just concluded last Sunday, a couple of days ago, just like the Copa America. Spain became a four-time European champions. Argentina won the second back-to-back Copa America. For them to have experienced such a trophy drought and then end up winning 4 different trophies, major and minor, including the two Copa Americas and a World Cup, of course, in the last 3 years is quite an achievement. In this one, I was simply paying homage to Toni Kroos, who is one of my favorite midfield players and certainly probably the best deep-lying playmaker of his generation, the kind of player that the Italians like calling regista, a true Real Madrid legend, and obviously really lifted up that German national team with his comeback, where they were at least able to compete. Of course, they fell to the eventual champions in Spain, but, only one team can actually win. England lost, as it usually happens. Kroos is wearing here Audemars Piguet Royal Oak offshore chronograph in stainless steel, navy mega tapisserie dial, and a color-coordinated rubber strap, lovely orange accents on it as well. It's a reference 26740. By the way, if you want to drop a like to any of these pictures, please feel free. Again, anything helps. And it is free, of course. It helps getting more eyeballs, honestly, on my content, which I do put a decent amount of effort to bring to your eyes. Another attendee at Wimbledon was, of course, Roger Federer, who won it 8 times, if I'm not mistaken. And as a Rolex ambassador, he was wearing the so-called Rolex Wimbledon, the Datejust Wimbledon, in a rather unique combination. I always like Datejusts in a smaller size, coordinating the Jubilee bracelet with a fluted bezel. But since this is a pretty special one and a watch that kind of has its own segment, so to speak, it makes sense to play around with these things. So he was wearing the version, the two-tone version, first of all, which I think has a nicer interplay between the yellows and the greens, which of course are supposed to evoke the grass court. And of course, he also combines the oyster bracelet with a smooth bezel, which, again, I guess it makes sense in this particular case because it is a different kind of date chest. A more interesting, perhaps more rare sighting was the Croatian tennis pro Donna Vekic, who was wearing her FB Jaune Elegant. She has a few different versions of this, but this particular one was the titanium with 2 rows of brilliant cut diamonds flanking the case. I think there are 38 diamonds in total, and she was pairing it with an orange strap, which is very distinct, of course, and it doesn't necessarily have to be for the clay court. I know Rafael Nadal, of course, uses those orange accents in his Richard Mille pieces to refer to his supremacy on the clay courts. But in this case, I think it is a nice accent because Donna Vekic too plays actually with the watch, which is quite fascinating and not altogether common. This is the smaller version, 40 millimeters. Of course, the Elegant having been introduced as a feminine alternative to all the other pieces in FB Jaune's catalog, has been expanded quite a bit. The Titanite version with the 48 millimeter case is extremely popular with all kinds of collectors who are taken by that relatively interesting complication where it can actually hibernate, but also once you pick up the watch back to put on your wrist, catch up with your time. Quite a, I want to say unique, but I think there were a few quartz movements that had implemented the piece that catching up with the time before. But it is a watch that lives up to its name. I think it's very nimble, it's very elegant. The flat tortue case obviously has a longer heritage with Cartier and other barrel-shaped designs. Ultimately, I think none of these watches really justify the pricing on the secondary market, but still quite interesting and fascinating to see it at least on the tennis court on Wimbledon. Another player who was quite proud of his watch, another N-C, is Daniil Medvedev, or Medvedev, I think. My Russian being what it is, I might be missing something there. He has been an ambassador of Beauvais for quite some time now, and he likes the color blue. Here is his official ambassador portrait, wearing the same watch. That's an iteration of the collaboration that Beauvais did with Pininfarina, the automotive designer. Tourbillon, I think their first collaboration was back in 2008 for the 40th anniversary of Pininfarina. This is the 86, so it is actually the 86th year, 86th anniversary tourbillon, blue titanium case, which is mounted on a rubber strap, but because of the particular design of the Beauvais pieces, they're quite modular. That rubber strap can serve as a kind of stand even, so you can have it kind of displayed on your desk if you want, or on your nightstand. You can remove the lower half, the part at 6 o'clock, and kind of treat it as a pocket watch, which at the end of the day, the design of the watch really is that of a pocket watch, or you can just wear it on a rubber strap on your wrist, which is what Medvedev does. 10-day power reserve at full crank. A flying tourbillon with the cage at 6 o'clock. A rather industrial design with an open-worked dial, off-center subdial for hours and minutes that counterbalance that oversized power reserve indicator. I think it's not really my style, but I think it's a very interesting and unique watch. And even in an ambassadorial position, it's fascinating to see these kinds of athletes going for something different rather than something much more predictable. Speaking of which, that's the story with Russell Westbrook's visit to Wimbledon. He was greeted by Novak Djokovic. And Russell Westbrook was, in a way, giving a lesson in sticking to the original conception, the original vision of Gerard Janta in wearing a Royal Oak Jumbo, even though he is obviously a giant of a man. He is wearing the new Jumbo in pink gold, the 16202 OR, with also the new smoked gray dial. This was also a personal choice for Victor Hovland, the Norwegian golfer who's actually endorsed by Audemars Piguet. I think it's my favorite of all the new versions of the Jumbo. I find it most distinctive, and somehow, pink gold looks great with kind of chocolate brown dials. Pink gold looks great with bright or sunburst finished blue dials, of course. But I've come to appreciate more muted colors in combination with pink gold, because they do really jump out in that particular way. And this smoked gray is fantastic. Jaeger-LeCoultre does this really well too. If you see a lot of their pink gold pieces, including, for example, the Tribute chronograph, the pink gold version has this sort of striking black dial, which is actually kind of a chameleon as well, and it really plays well with the warmth of the pink gold. Every brand, of course, has their own shade, has their specific alloy when it comes to that. I've always loved the one that Jaeger-LeCoultre uses, 5N. Also, AP's is pretty good too. Rolex's, I like it, but it does strike me sometimes as being too coppery. But anyway, so this is Russell Westbrook visiting the eventual finalist, Novak Djokovic, at Wimbledon. Of course, it was Carlos Alcaraz who won. And we're going to get to his watch in a little bit. Hey, Mr. Tudor, to you. Thank you so much for being here. Guys, please hit the like button. It really is a good help for me. Hit the like button. Hombre, yes, you can say that. I think, you know, this is not a scientific category, really. Some people simply use the English word smoked. The hombre you mean is spelled without an H, not like the words for man in Spanish, which is also hombre. So a homonym for sure. But yes, you know, hombre is something also used like, you know, in hair coloring, kind of like the highlights, you know, where you have a blending of one shade of the color to another. Sometimes people say fumé, as if there's this smoked effect on the periphery of the dial. In English, I simply say smoked. Serves a purpose. But yeah, hombre is just as good of a term. Oh, the baby. And before we come to Alcaraz, the baby is one of my favorite rappers. Of course, he came under huge scrutiny after the kind of run he had from 2020 to 2022. You know, I don't have an opinion on that. I just enjoy the music. I think, you know, those of you who know that I listen to a lot of rap know that Gucci Mane is my favorite rapper. And even though I love what he has become, I kind of miss the energy of a young Gucci. And the baby is one of those rappers who actually brings out that kind of energy, especially in the freestyles that he did. This was from a couple of months ago where he dropped by Los Angeles and did a freestyle, of course, a 242 for the Power 106 show with Just Incredible. And he did it over Like That, that future Metro Boomin song, where you had the Kendrick verse that sparked the most recent feud, and did over Get It Sexy, which is a Sexy Red beat. And in both cases, he really puts his own spin on it. Beautiful stuff, great energy. And he was, you know, he was wearing a watch that's, for a rapper at least, is just like his white shirt that he's wearing under that Prada vest. Just a stainless steel Royal Oak chronograph with a black dial. Of course, it is the latest model, the one introduced in 2022 with the in-house movement, replacing the long-standing Frédéric Piguet caliber 1185. This is the caliber 4401, self-winding, column wheel, vertical clutch, with the added flyback functionality. So it has the bells and whistles inside It is the 41 millimeter case size, but otherwise it's a pretty simple, pretty raw watch for a rapper, so to speak. And I really appreciate that. I think it really says something about his energy as well. It's not like he's not flashy at all, but there's this kind of no nonsense, meat and potatoes, brawny, and kind of fighter like energy that he has, which I really like. And what better to express that than the Royal Oak? That is the 26240 ST with a black dial. Of course, the champion, Carlos Alcaraz. Again, not much to say when it comes to his choices. When you look at it on the surface level, he is a Rolex ambassador. Of course, he's going to strap on his Rolex watch when it comes to lift the trophy. But hey, look, I like this guy, so I give him a lot of benefit of doubt. But I also like the fact that he always goes for the same watch, which, again, when it comes to luxury pieces, it is a little more quirky. It is a Daytona, and he has a stainless steel one too, but he really seems to be enjoying this one because whenever he lifts a trophy, it is that 116 518 LN that comes out, 18 carats, yellow gold on the Oyster Flex bracelet with the ceramic bezel and the meteorite dial. That was Wimbledon 2024. That's Roland Garros 2024. Just a few months ago. And that's Wimbledon 2023. It's not like he never wears another watch. I've seen him in public with an Oyster Perpetual 41 with a green dial. I've seen him in public with the new titanium Yachtmaster. I've seen him lift a trophy with stainless steel Daytona with the black dial from the previous series. But I guess this is either his first or one of his first that he received from Rolex, and certainly his favorite because he keeps coming back to it. And I like that. Under all those layers of staged endorsements and brand deals, there's some authenticity that seems to peek through. So I like it. Mr. Tudor to you says, don't forget football, hombre, hombre, pas hombre. Yeah, that's... Yeah, I was really sad, man. Brazil didn't get far in Copa America either. And it didn't help that Vinicius Jr. was booked. Was he red carded, or was it like, too many yellow cards accumulated? But he didn't play in the quarterfinal against Uruguay, which is when they went out. That was really sad. Mr. Tudor 305. Yeah, it would be great for you, Mr. Tudor, for you, right? It's if Brazil had made it to the final in a Copa America hosted by the US, which doesn't happen often and perhaps shouldn't, because US is not even part of the confederation that organizes the cup. It is a South American competition. It is organized by CONMEBOL, but this was a pretty special edition. Yeah, speaking of watches that are a little more interesting and a little more personal. This is Pierce Brosnan's piece. I peeked it when he was posing with fellow actor Glenn Close, again in the Ralph Lauren suite at Wimbledon. He's at his most Bond-like, even has the, post 007 Sean Connery beard to go with it. Of course, he has a much better hairline than Sean Connery. I'm not even going to compare it to myself. But yeah, this is a beautiful suit. We were talking about the kind of good stuff that Ralph Lauren makes. I don't think this is necessarily a purple label, but nevertheless, it's certainly very nicely fitted, at the very least, altered for him. And it looks beautiful. It's one of those subtle herringbone patterns, which is, I think, in this case, rendered as a mix of linen, wool, and silk. Linen for that décontracté, casual, relaxed appearance. Wool for a little bit better drape and a little more structure, so to speak, for the lack of a better word. Of course, it's really the padding of the jacket of the that gives it structure. But I'm kind of fumbling for my words here. And silk for a little bit of that sheen, which is always great for the summer. And he's wearing his personal choice, Gérard Perregaux vintage 1945. And this was easier to spot and easier to identify because he had previously profiled it at British GQ. It's one of his early luxury purchases that he says made his knees shake. I think it was during the filming of Laws of Attraction, where he stars against Julianne Moore. Horrible film, if memory serves, but nevertheless, I love Brosnan, so I'm not going to talk too much shit. But he apparently went out and bought this watch for himself then, and he still wears it on a pretty regular basis. Again, if you like these sorts of Art Deco designs, square-cased or rectangular-cased watches, this gives you quite a bit. The asymmetric dial doesn't hurt either, with a power reserve indicator. I think I wrote at 4:30 in the write-up, but it's really more like at 5, off-center seconds at 9 o'clock, and a date window at 1:30. Any other way, that date window would stick like a sore thumb to me, and I would hate it. But with an asymmetric dial, it somehow works in all that chaos, in all that disorganization. There is kind of a method to the madness of the watch. So I really do like it. Beautiful piece. And again, that it's a personal choice and not simply an endorsement really does it for me. Yeah, I'm not going to butcher the Portuguese sentence for my, with my bad accent, but Mr. Tudor to you says Brazil is forever the world champions, or the world champion, but honestly, the worst selection ever this year, whatever. Yeah, look, I mean, Brazil always is, if you go into any tournament, whether it's a Copa America or World Cup, and it's the team that's supported by the neutrals, because for the most part, Brazil is the team that comes that arrives at the tournament to play football, and to play football beautifully. Yeah, so it's always a shame when they don't live up to the standards that they set for themselves over the decades of success. Yeah, it's incredible to me that Brazil hasn't won the World Cup since 2002. Here's something a little different. Apparently, it was His Majesty the Sultan of Brunei's birthday already a couple of days ago, and the bespoke shoemaker George Cleverly's George Glasgow Jr. posted this photo. It was my friend Eddie Schipoli who sent me this photo. I hadn't otherwise paid attention to it. He is wearing a pretty interesting aquanaut that you can kind of peep there by the open working at around 9 o'clock. It is the so-called Terminator, the Patek Philippe Advanced Research Aquanaut Travel Time, the reference 5650G. It is the 40.8 millimeter case rendered in white gold. This was a limited edition of 500 pieces back in 2017. Incidentally, the 20th anniversary of the design, which kind of evolved over a couple of years in the late 90s as a derivation from the Nautilus, but I find it a much more balanced and, to me, a more pleasing design to me. In this case, as part of the Advanced Research series, I believe it was the 6th entry to it, and it was the first time that they used a non-Calatrava case, the first time they used a sportier design, and the first time they actually introduced components that were not only silicon components. And what they exhibited at 9 o'clock was, in fact, the hand-finished stainless steel works of the travel time complication, which, of course, helps you move the local hour hands in 1 hour increments, forward and backward. The new system, which is yet another step in the evolution of the Louis Cotier design, Louis Cotier being the same person that provided the world time complication as well to Patek Philippe. And this particular version of the travel time actually is without any pivots, without JB, thank you, my man. Let me read that. Without any pivots and without any gears. It has a lower part count than the usual system they use for their travel time, which means there's no need for conventional lubricants. Improved durability and functionality is, of course, what you expect from this, and they wanted to showcase it with some open working on the dial. I wish they got rid of number 9 as well, but anyway, it's a very quirky watch at any rate, and people who would appreciate it would love it In either case, I think when it was introduced, the list price was right around or right under 60,000 US dollars. That was back in 2017. So very much right before the entire craze started. Nowadays, you can find these watches if and when they emerge on the secondary market, pardon me, for around and sometimes even more than listed for, sometimes even more than $500,000. Quite mind-blowing, but it is what it is. Of course, there's also a pointer date at 6 o'clock, which gives you the date of the locality, of local time. The two apertures give you day-night indication for both local and reference time or home time. And the classic globescape design that has become part and parcel of the contemporary Aquanaut design is matched by a tropic style strap in the same color. This is the Sultan of Brunei wearing the 5650G, the advanced research Aquanaut travel time, one of 500 pieces. Thank you for $19.99, JB. Carlos caught the gold Daytona bug. Of course, JB has a gold Daytona on Oysterflex as well. And who can blame him? I watched his French Open and Wimbledon runs, which are quite recent and back-to-back. By the way, he won Wimbledon back-to-back and he won 2 Grand Slams back-to-back this year. Amazing. Yellow gold on a young champ. Rolex has found their next star. He has certainly been the most consistent among this new crop. There's no doubt about that. Thank you so much for that super chat. As always, well appreciated. A little bit of morning coffee from earlier today with Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt has kind of become this generation of collectors is Sly. He has kind of become the Sly Stallone for this generation's collectors, because at least at this point in time, in his current age, he seems to spark with genuine enthusiasm for watches. He has had a Nautilus long before it was hyped. He has had all kinds of interesting Rolexes, all of which I documented on my Instagram feed. He has also actually bought one of the most expensive Patek Philippe pieces to have been ever sold on public auction, with this number at the Only Watch from a few years back. From 2015. That is a one-of-a-kind, a pièce unique, minute repeating perpetual calendar with a retrograde date indicator, as well as a tourbillon escapement. Since it is one-of-a-kind, they could even forego the movement number that they usually inscribe on the face of the dial. Patek's style, as you guys know, is not to show the tourbillon escapement on the dial side. There's only one model from Patek Philippe that does that because it's an open work dial. I believe, I want to say the reference number for that is 5303. At any rate, this is a one-of-a-kind watch. The only example of it in stainless steel, 5016A, with a unique blue enamel dial as well, sold for 7.3 million Swiss francs back in 2015 at Only Watch, and it was understood to have been bought by Brad Pitt. So we'll go with that. More recently, he was one of the superstars, one of the celebrities seen wearing the re-edition, the revival of the Vacheron Constantin 222. The 222 was Vacheron Constantin's celebration of their 222nd anniversary in 1977. Sometimes it's mistakenly attributed to Gerald Janta, but it was actually designed at the time by a young Jörg Haschek. It was, of course, originally in stainless steel. It was never that popular. It always remained in the shadow of the earlier Gerald Janta designs, the earlier exemplars of that 70s style luxury integrated bracelet stainless steel watch. I think there were about 700 of them made in total, counting all the different examples. In the jumbo version, about 500 in stainless steel, some in a two-tone combination, some in yellow gold, and a few rare examples in white gold. I don't know how many of those exist, but apparently they do. There was one recently on public auction, in fact. Vacheron decided to bring it back in 2022, kind of echoing those numbers, those angel numbers, as people call them sometimes. I really love this photograph because it's also a great exemplar of summer style, you know, nice white linen shirt, off-white cotton pants. Brad Pitt has a penchant for monochromatic outfits, so it kind of fits his MO as well. A nice cup of coffee or a double shot of espresso and a gold watch. It's just perfect. For the re-edition of this watch, Vacheron basically kept the original proportions, kept the original design without changing much. On the face of it, the only different thing is this mirror polished inner flange, which my Royal Oak has as well. I think it's a nice accent, especially on a precious metal watch. So I'm glad that they did that as something that is distinct from the original. I've always liked this sort of gear-like or bottle cap design of the bezel, which in the rectangular versions I have started calling the mail stamp, postal stamp design. But I really love that notched pattern, that notched design. Of course, the honeycomb iteration of the bracelet is one of the highlights. A subtle marker of the brand's watchmaking heritage and symbol, the Maltese cross, both at 12 o'clock and on the barrel-shaped case at around 5 o'clock. And the piece actually features a new movement rather than the original Jaeger-LeCoultre 920 derived caliber 1120. This is the caliber 2455/2. It's not necessarily a modern and contemporary movement. It's, I think the power reserve is around 60, but at least it has a quick set date, which the original JLC 920 doesn't have. It also doesn't have a central sweep seconds indicator. Neither does this movement, so that's kept just like the original as well. A slightly increased power reserve from around 42 hours to 60, and of course an exhibition case back which allows you to admire the newly designed 22 karat, of course, oscillating weight, which is not only inscribed with the signature series of 3 2s, but also it mirrors a half of that bezel, that notched bezel design. It really looks like a nice Tissot PRX. Hey, why not? Why not? And the bracelet is just like Atelier Wen, you know, the Chinese brand, the Franco-Chinese brand, perhaps we should call them. JB says the 222 looks magnificent on ladies also. Not saying it's a girl's watch, but looks snazzy. I think so. I think the proportions of the watch is great. So it's almost, yeah, it's for all intents and purposes, it is a unisex watch. I think this kind of gold watch also can kind of go for all occasions. That's one of the other reasons that made me choose this picture. You know, it can be worn in a very casual and relaxed setting as well. It doesn't have to be an elevated occasion because the proportions of the watch are quite compact, 37 millimeters in diameter, and still less than 8 millimeters, even with the exhibition case back and updated movement in case thickness. So this is actually a fantastic piece to wear on a regular basis if you are lucky enough to have acquired one in time or can actually get the allocation for the modern version. Now, last but not least, for our Instagram tour, we go back to last weekend at Wimbledon. Oops, what just happened there? And we look at the captain of India's national cricket team, Rohit Sharma, who came to Wimbledon wearing one of my favorite modern, or rather contemporary Pateks from the selection that they still have in the catalog. This is the hand-wound chronograph with the in-house movement, the CH29535PS that replaced the Nouvelle Lemania CH27 in Patek's lineup ever since reference 5170. This is, of course, the 5172G. I think the dimensions of the case are quite modern without being overbearing. Of course, it also exists with the blue dial in this rose gilt opaline dial, which is Patek's way of saying salmon. I think it looks much more charming, to me at least, especially with the blackened dial fixtures, black and gold dial fixtures, I should say, and the syringe hands. Great balance for the design between what is modern and what is more vintage inflected. The syringe hands, as well as the round pushers with that slightly conical guilloche decorated top, are very distinct throwbacks. Of course, the round pushers refer back to that famous reference 1463, the Tasti Tondi, which had a similar design when it comes to the pushers. And those Arabic numerals filled with luminous material, as well as the hands, are quite modern as well. I like the triple step lugs. I wish it was a single step. I think that would give the design a little bit more of a contemporary feel, a little bit of a no frills kind of attitude. But even in this current design, I think this is a piece that can be worn more than simply as a dress watch. Okay, so we are in fact switching slowly but surely to our auction previews. This is actually an online sale by the Monaco Legend Group. Of course, they are more famous with their seasonal sales that are staged as live events in Monaco, Monte Carlo. However, more recently, they have dedicated some of the leftovers, so to speak, seemingly, in an online sale that started without reserve. And there are some interesting watches, some interesting deals. I have gone through some of them in the last live show. I'll go through more. I have sent the link in the chat. We'll do it our usual way. Feel free to click to that link and take a look. If you actually want to take a closer look at any one of these lots, if you want me to do a deep dive on any one of these watches, or if you have any other kind of question, watch-related question, ideally, feel free to send it in with a super chat, with the lot number, or with your specific question, and I will try to muster as much horological and historical knowledge as possible to tackle your request. As always, your support is invaluable. It's not only welcome, but really needed to keep the lights on. So anything you can do in terms of what YouTube enables you to support this platform is well appreciated. There are other alternatives to contribute that I linked in the video description. But if nothing else, I would really appreciate if you would just click the like so I get more eyeballs on this, share the link with friends so we can expand the community a little more. And otherwise, stay tuned and enjoy the show. thank you again for everything. Thank you for your presence and support. And Ryan Joffrey, I mean, hey, I like my ego stroked. I don't have anything against that. So thank you. You know, I know you mean it. I know you mean well. So I don't let it get to my head either. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of that. I want to have some of my flowers now rather than when I'm inevitably gone one day. Not to sound morbid, you know, just making a general statement. So I do appreciate what you're saying there. We had checked out some of these watches in the last episode, so I'm trying not to repeat it. Lot 33 is what they call a mini sub by Tudor. When Tudor came out with Black Bay 54, a lot of people were surprised by it. Others, of course, spoke to its vintage influences and kind of the original Rolex Submariner or Submariner proportions. But Tudor also always had the tradition of making so-called mini subs, sometimes oriented towards a more feminine customer, sometimes marketed towards a more junior customer. And this, what you're looking at right now, is one such example. It's a reference 94-400. I really like the font of the numbers on the dive timer, on the rotatable dive timing bezel. It's, of course, a piece rendered entirely in stainless steel, case and bracelets. And the case diameter in this particular instance is 33 millimeters. You see what I mean about that font? It's really nice and quirky. Ryan Joffrey, thank you so much for the lights and the honor. A true mensch. Thank you. You're a mensch as well, Ryan. I do appreciate you. Yeah, whether you are thinking of the mini sub again as something of maybe gift to a younger collector, to a young person you are trying to convince, compel into the hobby, or if you're thinking of it as something that is more compact for you to have as an alternative, or perhaps altogether you're thinking of it as as something to play around, just to be part of your collection. I think it is a very interesting watch to go after, and this is a fine example. The bracelet seems to have gone through better days, but nevertheless, overall, I think it's a decent example, even though there's a little bit of a stretch and signs of some enthusiastic polish, especially on the buckle of the bracelet. And if that is the case, chances are the watch itself has been polished quite heavily as well. which you can more or less make out. This is lot 33 for a Tudor Mini Submariner, reference 94,400, currently being bid at €500 at the Monaco Legends July online sale, which will conclude in less than 6 days. At lot 43, you have a very stunning Jaeger-LeCoultre pocket watch. A two-tone salmon-tinted pink dial. For this 1940s piece, stainless steel, 46 millimeters of diameter, hand-wound movements. And it's a day date, so to speak, with a pointer date that indicates the date with a red arrow, a small arrow at the center of the dial. And there is above the signature at 12 o'clock an opening, a wicket through which you can see the day inscribed in red and in French as well. It's a luminous dial with Arabic numerals and kind of obelisk looking hands. Heat blued in stainless steel in this particular case, and a small sub-dial for the seconds at 6 o'clock. Very handsome looking watch, honestly. Could appeal to some who like collecting these kinds of pieces. This is lot 43. The estimated value of the piece is set in the range between 2,000 to 4,000 euro, and the current bid stands at 700 in the same currency. At lot 46, we have one of the Longines chronographs, of which there are many interesting examples in this sale, some of which we have discussed at the last time. This is a single button chronograph, a monopusher chronograph with a multi-meter scale on the dial. It's from early 40s, in yellow gold, a 32 millimeter case, 32 millimeters in diameter. A two-tone dial that has seemingly gone through better days. On the periphery of that dial, you see the tachymeter inscribed in blue, a telemeter scale in a concentric circle, thin, elegant pencil hands for hour minutes, as well as the centrally deployed chronograph seconds dial chronograph seconds hand, which you can activate with the pusher at 2 o'clock, start, stop, reset, all the three functions controlled by that single button, Arabic numerals, and a continuous running second subdial at 6 o'clock. It's a pretty nicely preserved case, actually, which you can certainly discern from the crisp hallmarks on the lug of that case. Corporate office. Hey, man, we have to wait until the next watch time, Los Angeles in South Coast Plaza, to see each other again. But it's nice to see you in the chat. Thank you for being there. And this is a reference 4971, powered by the caliber 1268 Zs. Single rectangular button for this monopusher chronograph with a multimeter scale. In yellow gold, 32 millimeter case, lot 46. Due to its, I think, relatively tattered dial and diminutive size, comes at a very humble pre-auction estimate, with a very humble pre-auction estimate, 1,000 to 2,000 euro. Current bid is 500. People usually love dual time zone Cartier pieces. Perhaps some would be interested in Chopin's take. There are some examples of this particular watch or a similar style with a quartz movement. This one has a hand-wound caliber powering it. It's a rounded rectangular design with a nice curvature, somehow reminiscent of the Cartier Tank Centré, but also rather distinct from it. Chopin reference 2087 is here in yellow gold with a champagne dial to match. And the dimensions of the case are 22 by 36 millimeters. I think perhaps one small drawback of this watch is the relative visual or relative lack of distinction between the two time zones. A lot of times, the Cartier Tank Centrés that are designed the same way with two separate movements, two separate crowns to set time in two distinct time zones, have dials that can be easily distinguished from one another. You know, if one is, pardon me, one has hour markers in Arabic numerals, the other one has Roman numerals. If one has baton markers, the other one would have numerals, so on and so forth. There would be some way to distinguish them a little better. In this case, there's no such thing, but at least the dials are actually inscribed with local time and home time at their respective 12 o'clock locations, with the upper dial dedicated to local time and the lower dial for the reference time. A nicely preserved example of a rectangular dual time watch by Chopard in yellow gold, 22 by 36 millimeters, reference 2087. The pre-auction estimate is 4,000 to 8,000, which doesn't really matter because watches here for this auction, for this online sale, are sold without reserve, and the current bid stands at 500 for the piece at lot 52. Lot 56 is a watch that is associated with JFK's name. As you guys know, he was very much into Art Deco design and had rectangular and square-cased watches, most famously perhaps a Cartier Tank, which he had as an his and hers watch with his wife. However, this is a watch that he was said to have in his collection, though he was never photographed with it. I don't think anyone really came up with his example either, but the Zenith respirators, the square-cased time and date pieces, are usually also known as the JFK. It's a 60s piece, stainless steel case in 30 millimeter, a black dial, kind of a quirky design where you have a sector inspired dial with a trapezoid indicator for the dates at 4:30. Lot 56 is also being currently bid at 500 euro. It will conclude, the auction will conclude at 5:55 a.m. Pacific time on July 22nd, which is right before 9 for those of you on the East Coast. Love you too, man. Thank you for being here. We are looking at the July online sale of the Monaco Legend Group, which is a collaboration between Davide Parmigiani and Claude Cohen in Monaco, of all places. Davide Parmigiani works also with his son, Andrea Parmigiani, and they recently joined forces with Corrado Mattarelli as well. So that is the Monaco Legend family, so to speak. Again, if I'm skipping over any watches that you would like me to discuss or to discuss again, for those I have actually talked about in the last live stream, feel free to alert me, feel free to direct my attention to it. I'm looking in the meantime to lot 68, which is an ultra thin dress watch by the International Watch Company, the brand that we know as IWC, 34 millimeters in stainless steel, and ultra thin movements in a case that has that sort of flying saucer design with the dial itself taking the valuable real estate, simple, elegant, three-hander, sweep center seconds, time only, stick markers for the hours, which are doubled at 12 o'clock, pearl markers for on the minute track, and kind of like a disco volante shape, which has come into attention again through recent releases by Baltic in their prismatic series, and more recently by Furlan Marie in their Disco Volante, which we didn't discuss and we might leave to discuss later, perhaps tomorrow. We'll see about that. This is a piece with a hand-wound movement, which allows it to stay at that sleek, ultra-thin dimensions. Very well preserved. For a watch out of the 60s, both in terms of the condition of its case and the dial. And the piece has not yet attracted any bids, but the pre-auction estimate sets its value in the range between 1,000 to 2,000 euro, and the starting bid would be 500 euro. Again, an interesting vintage chronograph in the next lot. The condition of the dial might take away from the overall monetary value of the watch, but the CK2092 is an interesting reference. It's powered by caliber 33.3 and has a beautiful two-tone dial with a multimeter scale. There's a pulsometer in red, graduated for 30 pulsations. In a concentric circle, there's the telemeter, which is the measurement, which is for the measurement of distance, and then tachymeter snailed in at the very center of the dial. Heat blued hands, which includes a stunning Breguet-styled handset for the hour and minutes, a 30-minute totalizer at 3 o'clock, and a running seconds at 9 o'clock on a subdial. This is the Omega CK2092 at lot 69 from 1930s in what is an oversized case for its time, 37 millimeters in stainless steel. The watch is currently being bid at 600 euro, and it was valued in the range between 3,000 to 6,000 euro by the auctioneers. I know we talked about this watch in the previous show, but I have to draw attention to this again because it is really a lesson in how uniquely and attractively patina can develop over time. Here in the example of a stainless steel, silver case, because you might actually think that this watch is somehow put through rather, PVD or DLC treatments to achieve that particular look. However, this is actually, Lot 70 is a single button chronograph by Movado in silver from the 1940s. And it's a piece that has aged from that original silver into an almost blackened look, but certainly a very dark anthracite gray. And I think that's a beautiful contrast with the dial as well, because the dial is very much classic expression with the Breguet Arabic numerals for the hour markers, stainless steel handsets, spade hands for the hour and minutes, with the minutes hands elegantly twisted, all tempered, heat blued. The single button, the mono pusher, is neatly integrated onto the onion crown. So the watch itself is stunningly simple and elegant, which allows that contrast between the classical expression of the dial and the unique and somehow contemporary aging of the case to really shine through. This is lot 70 for the Movado monopusher chronograph from the 40s with a uniquely patinated silver case, 34 millimeters in diameter. The piece is currently being bid at €700. And as you can see, it also has a beautiful hinged case back, which can allow you to peek into the movements. Very nice and clean. What a beautiful watch. Memo Vox, thank you so much. Good morning. Good morning to Denmark. 100 Danish kroner. Memo Vox is also a member of the channel. I really appreciate it. Guys, please hit the like button. In the meantime, it really, really helps. Corporate says, am I a weirdo for loving? Is it so? What reference is this? Are we talking about the 5212, the Patek, the weekly calendar? That's a cool watch. It's I actually, when it first came out, I almost immediately fell in love with it. The novelty of the font that is used in the dial kind of wore out for me over time. But I think it's still a cool watch. Still a cool watch. Lot 73 is Gégé Lecoutre chronograph, signed Lecoutre at 12 o'clock. So seemingly supplied to the American market. This particular piece is engraved on the case back. Dedicated to Captain Ray Allemand, a U.S. military pilot who served for 19,500 hours. It seems perhaps this was a watch dedicated to him, given to him by Swiss watchmakers. Clearly, the auction house doesn't really have a paper trail, doesn't really have a clear provenance for this watch, but it is nicely preserved. It does have a unique provenance, which is inscribed on the case back, and it is, at any rate, a very attractive chronograph that is powered by the caliber Valjoux 72. These are great little chronographs. Also, I think quite attractive because of their compact yet distinctly designed cases. Those shouldered lugs, I think, are quite beautiful. I think the case diameter should be right around 36 millimeters. Dauphine hands, which I believe at one time were inlaid with luminous material, but now have this skeletonized look. Arabic numerals, 3 chronograph registers, which include a 30-minute totalizer at 3 o'clock, 12-hour counter at 6, and continuous running seconds at 9 o'clock. And there is also a tachymeter scale inscribed in blue on the periphery of the dial. This is the kind of watch that has a lot of character, a good history, even though it's not necessarily backed by a paper trail. It has seen better days, maybe not in the perfect condition, but could be very attractive. This is lot 73 for Lecoutre chronograph in stainless steel, powered by Valjoux caliber 72. The piece is currently being bid at €500 from the Monaco Legends July online sale. Yeah, no, you're not you're not a weirdo at all. Just so you guys know, we are talking about the weekly calendar Calatrava in stainless steel with that parchment colored dial, with what is a unique complication for Patek Philippe, the weekly calendar. The watch, of course, shows the dates through a window at 3 o'clock and the day of the week at the center of the dial as well, with a pointer, but it also shows the week of the year. When it was first released, I fell in love. I thought it was so great. Best thing since sliced bread. I still like a lot about this watch, like the way that those obus shaped hour markers blackened and the blackened Dauphine hands, I think a great contrast to the off-white dial, and very legible too. But the novelty of the font kind of wore off for me, especially once I saw it in person. But it's still, I think, a pretty cool watch. I like the case design. I like that it is a stainless steel Calatrava. I like that it is, a little more interesting than any other Calatravas that Patek has, without trying to be something else. I've always hated those pilot watch styled versions, just because Patek made like a grand total of two or three pilot's watches in their entire history. But yeah. Memovox says, revisiting the Monaco auction, not a bad idea. Lots of gems in this auction. Yes, there are a lot of interesting ones, and I hadn't covered everything, as you know. You did help me pay attention to some stuff that I may have otherwise missed, including that lip dive watch. But there's more. And here is the piece that is actually depicted in my thumbnail, if I'm not mistaken. This is a very interesting Longines chronograph from 1980s with a 37 millimeter yellow gold case, a champagne dial to match. It also has a moon phase indicator. Otherwise, a classic Longines chronograph powered by the caliber 502. The watch seems quite well preserved, especially in terms of the dial, which has, at its best, taken on a very warm patina, a great complement to the warmly oxidized case. I actually like the olive-shaped pushers, which kind of accentuates the stylized design of this piece with a stepped bezel. Again, actually, it's a pretty nice size. 37 millimeters, I think, is great for this sort of dressy chronograph piece. In addition to its bicompax layout, continuous running seconds at 9, and a 30-minute totalizer at 3. The piece also has a crescent-like, downward-facing crescent-like aperture at 6 o'clock for the moon phase indicator. It also has a pointer that indicates the date along the periphery of the dial where it is inscribed in blue. Arabic numerals at 12 and 6. Stick markers for the hours otherwise. And the winged Longines logo under the signature of the brand at 12 o'clock. A piece that exudes a lot of warmth and unique character. This is lot 77 for a Longines bicompax chronograph with date and indication of moon phases, reference 6574. It is currently being bid at €900. Very interesting piece. We have looked at a lot of these watches previously, so that's why I'm skipping over a lot of them, but there is another beautiful Jaeger-LeCoultre pocket watch that I wanted to bring to your attention. This is lot 101. Again in stainless steel from around year 1950, 48 millimeters in diameter. So a very nicely sized piece. Painted Breguet numerals for the hour markers. Breguet hands rendered in stainless steel and heat blued. There's a subtly sunken, beautiful off-center seconds subdial at 9 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, there is a LeCoultre patent signature to balance it out with a similar subtly sunken design. And there is a porthole-like opening at 6 o'clock, which is actually a power reserve indicator. You guys know that over the course of their design history, Jaeger-LeCoultre likes watches with power reserve indicators, with unique expressions of that power reserve indicator as well, for both of their self-winding watches like the Future Matic and others. This is a hand-wound piece with an 8-day power reserve. And obviously, once that power becomes depleted, you see more of red through that porthole-like opening at 6 o'clock. A beautifully designed and relatively well-preserved piece that comes with a branded presentation box, a fitted presentation box, also signed LeCoultre. A gorgeous little piece, again 48 millimeters in diameter, rendered in stainless steel, Breguet hands and numerals, off-center subdial for seconds, and a power reserve indicator at 6 o'clock. Lot 101 is being bid at €600. Now I want to make sure that I don't run out of battery for this microphone, and I also want to take a quick break. You guys know what happened last time, so stay tuned. It might happen again, but hopefully this time I won't forget turning off the microphone. Please hit the like button while I'm taking this short break and enjoy this time-only Tissot with a beautiful tuxedo dial. I'm not a huge fan of the fabric strap that they used to present this piece, but it is quite gorgeous from the 40s with a 37 millimeter stainless steel case. I'll be back soon. Please hit the like button. I would appreciate your patience. Thank you. Okay, let's see if I don't experience the same technical problem with the microphone, and I don't mean the one from a few days back from last week, but the one I was experiencing at the beginning of this show. We're looking at lot 106 from the July online sale of the Monaco Legend auction. A Tissot dress watch in stainless steel with a tuxedo dial. The piece is from the 1940s and has a nice size for it for that time, 37 millimeters in diameter. It is one of the pioneers, or Tissot rather, is one of the pioneers for basic protection against magnetic fields, and the watch is thus signed anti-magnétique on the dial, right under the Tissot signature. Very nicely preserved. Cream center with a kind of dark gray, almost black hour track, Arabic numerals. The subdial for the seconds at 6 o'clock replicates the same color scheme, except its center is actually radially grooved. The case, as you can see from the profile too, is nicely preserved. Overall, pretty cool piece at lot 106 at Tissot anti-magnetic stainless steel dress watch from the 1940s, 37 millimeters in diameter, with a tuxedo dial. The piece is currently being bid at 500 euro. A similar style, perhaps with a more muted design with 24-hour indication on the outer periphery, Arabic numerals on this dial, which are complemented by their smaller counterparts for the 24-hour indication inscribed in blue. Oversized for its time, the stainless steel dress watch, Calatrava style watch, is 38 millimeters in diameter. Nicely preserved once again. Very nice decoration also between each hour marker on the outer periphery with this like 3 teeth rendered in a kind of eggshell shade, which complements the two-tone silver dial beautifully. And the heat-blued stainless steel hands for the hour and minutes make it also very nicely legible. This is an Omega dress watch again in an oversized configuration from the 40s, 38 millimeters in stainless steel. The case is relatively well preserved with a matching Omega buckle as well. The piece has not yet attracted any bids, but the starting bid would be at 500 euro. Its value is estimated in the range between 1,000 to 2,000 euros, this Omega dress watch. At 109, we have a more compact sized dress watch by Omega. It's a Seamaster from the 1950s with a 34 millimeter stainless steel case. It's a piece that was retailed by Turle and signed thus at 6 o'clock. Signed Omega Seamaster at 12 o'clock with the Omega logo, Arabic numerals at quarters, and arrow markers for the rest. Again, an interesting silver dial. Very classically styled piece at lot 109, currently being bid at 500 euro. Continuing this theme of Omega pieces, here is a chronometer with observatory styled hands at lot 113. Again, quite diminutive in sizing, 34 millimeters of diameter in a stainless steel case. The dial has seen better days, but has acquired something of a warm patina beyond its imperfections, kind of a two-tone color. Observatory hands, an oversized subdial for the seconds, Roman numerals for the hour markers. This Omega chronometer is from 1940s, powered by 30 T2R. The piece has not yet attracted any bids, but the opening bid would be 500 euro. Ryan Joffrey says, Memovox, that's 1462 in US dollars. Thank you for helping support YB and his excellent stream. Hey, thank you for doing the conversion, Ryan Joffrey. Look, I appreciate anything and everything that people give. I don't take it for granted. I do work hard for it, but I know at the end of the day, it is something that people give to both recognize that work and effort, but also simply to convey their appreciation sometimes. In either case, I really, really appreciate it myself. You're looking at Yellow Gold's Abel piece. It's their Voyager, their approach to the travel watch, to the world time piece. with a rotating bezel ring for the cities, a rotating city ring on the bezel, you might also say. The 24-hour ring is actually depicted on the rejo, and again, in a two-tone way with opaline white half standing for morning hours and a black ring for the night hours, black dial, Roman numerals for the hour markers. A date window at 3 completes the picture, and the yellow gold case is quite distinctive for Abel with the exposed screws. Abel is a watch that has started getting more attention recently. This is a 90s piece, 39 millimeters in diameter for that yellow gold case. The base movement is adapted from the standard ETA 2892-2. It's a pretty good looking watch, a handsome piece with a useful and ever so popular complication for a brand that seems to have once again started to be appreciated in a certain way. This is the Abel Voyager, their version of the World Timer in yellow gold from the 90s. The piece is currently being bid at €2,200. The pre-auction estimates stood in the range between €2,000 to €4,000. At 119, we have a Rolex Datejust, a so-called chronograph. This is reference 1625 in yellow gold. The chronograph is a 50s model, one of the first Rolex timepieces to feature a rotating bezel, which makes it in a way a kind of precursor to the Submariner with its dive timing bezel, and the GMT Master, which with its rotatable 24-hour bezel allows for the time to be shown in another zone. In this case, it very much serves as a kind of timing bezel, measuring elapsed time. 36 millimeters in yellow gold with a silver dial. Date at 3 o'clock, of course, with a Cyclops magnifier above it, which is signature Rolex. The rotatable bezel has a coin-edged grip and a fluted decoration on the top between the decimal digits, so to speak, which are also separated to 5 minutes intervals as well by sticks. And of course, there is a triangle that is aligned here with the Rolex coronets on that silvered sunburst dial. This is a Rolex chronograph from 1967, powered by caliber 1570, a Datejust chronograph in yellow gold. The piece is currently being bid at 1,200 euro. The pre-auction estimate was set at the range between 3,500 to 7,000 euro. Yeah, I hate all the Pilot Calatravas that Patek has ever produced, including the travel time, including the time and dates, all of it. I think it doesn't look like Patek to me. That's all I can say. Ryan Joffrey was saying that he really enjoyed the look of the patina on this 50s Seamaster that was lot 109. And Memovox says, in relation to the last watch we looked at, which is lot 119, he says, those are Datejusts for the connoisseur. I completely agree. Again, I'm, for the right one, I can certainly see going for it. But I'm not sure if I'm personally ready for that jump just yet. I think it might be a good time to wrap things up in the next 10 minutes. I'm going to do a proper video on a couple of things, which I might release over the course of the next 2 days. I don't think I'll be able to have a live stream tomorrow night or Thursday night for that matter, but I will see if I can do something earlier tomorrow and maybe with a specific topic. So maybe I will handle one of the things that I want to talk about in a live stream rather than a pre-recorded video. We'll see maybe like a short, 30, 45 minute live stream or something of that sort. Maybe in that time we can talk about the new releases by Furlan Marie, the Disco Volante. You guys remember that very recently Baltic had come out with a new series for their watches called Prismic. Those are now out of stock, but they were more or less dedicated to a similar aesthetic. Of course, those cocktail watches from the said time periods were largely integrated bracelet pieces and lugless designs, or designs that had a very discrete lug design. Baltic kind of, to make it a little more modular perhaps for the contemporary collector, went for a lugged or lugged design, but nevertheless pairing them up with these mesh bracelets, I think came up with some interesting pieces. None of the dial designs necessarily appealed to me. I think they were a little too loud and too decorated for me, perhaps with this slate gray / blue one being my favorites. They're now sold out, but I'm sure they will come back at a certain point. They're pretty reliable in terms of restocking some of their popular models throughout the year. And I really appreciated the price point on these two, which were right under 1,000 for the pieces on a leather strap, and 1,050 in euro for those paired with a mesh bracelet. Now, funny enough, Furlan Marie released an entire series not long after as Disco Volante, again inspired by those vintage classics. The design language is pretty similar, except this time what you have is a true lugless design in 3 color schemes: Havana, which is an interesting brown, maroon / pink / salmon dial in a 38 millimeter case. The pieces are powered by the same Peseux 7001 that was the beating heart of those Baltic prismics that you were looking at. I think I'm similarly kind of disappointed with the designs here. I appreciate that they stuck to a true Disco Volante shape. I don't particularly like any of the dial designs, but that's a very subjective choice. That's a very individual take. I'm nevertheless disappointed by the fact that these watches are priced at such a higher segment, at 2,500 Swiss francs, 2,500 Swiss francs, which comes out, of course, to 2,565 euro roughly, to the 1,050 euro of Baltics pieces in the Prismic series, which actually came with a mesh bracelet. Now, again, I think these pieces have their own redemptive qualities. I do like the case design better. I absolutely hate the Disco Verde. I'm not really taken by the Disco Celeste either. The Havana is okay, perhaps the one I like most. But even then, I think the dial has just too much going on for my taste. If they just went with a classic sector design without any numerals, without any distinct different tones, could have been much better. And I do like that idea of illuminating it, like making it luminous as well. But once again, just like Baltic's design, I feel like there's too much going on the dial. I like the hand-wound caliber they used. I think Pessu 7001 is a great movement. But at the end of the day, it is a movement developed by the ETA manufacturer. It's not really finished at a higher grade than the one that powered Baltic's pieces. So I'm not really convinced by what they added here in terms of value when you compare it to an earlier release from Baltic. I know they had a whole shtick that talks about the history of Pessu that went with the release of this. I know they keep saying that, they redesigned the bridges of the movements and given some extra finishing. Whether that really lifts the watch from one price segment to another, I will leave it to you to judge, because again, this is a watch that costs more than twice as much as its most direct competitor, which is the Baltic Prismic. But this is the new Furlan Mari Disco Volante that's released in 3 different colorways, available for pre-order now, to be delivered in September, in Havana, Verde, and Celeste. Guys, thank you again for all your support. I want to send some special thanks to Jake Brooks, Ryan Joffrey, and Memovox, who super chatted. Memovox is also a member of the channel, which means he has access to member exclusive content. If you want to avail yourself of that, feel free to sign up. I really appreciate it when you guys use all these different ways of contributing to the channel that YouTube makes available to you. If you prefer to contribute in other ways, the links are available in the video description for PayPal, Patreon, and Cash App. In either case, your support and presence is well appreciated. If you haven't hit that like button already, please do so on your way out, and feel free to share the link with other enthusiasts, your fellow watch collectors. It always helps to add some color, some quality and quantity to the kind of conversations we are building here, to the kind of community that we are building on this platform, which hopefully, with more time on my hands, I will turn also to some real-time events as well, real-life events as well. Of course, I look forward to seeing many of you on the East Coast in Watch Time New York City in October, but perhaps we can even do something before then, on the West Coast or on the East. Let's try to see what we can do together. And if there is any interest from people on my side of the country, of the United States, again, thank you everyone for your presence and support, for supporting the channel, for supporting me, and first and foremost, and most importantly, to keep the lights on, to keep this community active and expanding. I'll see you in the next one. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and until then, wear and enjoy your watches. Take care.